Hi guys, we're doing things a little differently this go round. You guys do not get to see the behind the scenes as we record the podcast. So we're going to give you guys some visuals for the YouTube channel to accompany the readings, okay? So I have my script in place. I have my notes from the readings, and we're going to get into it. Welcome to Unsolved Energy with Travi, where the dead still speaks and the truth doesn't stay buried. I'm your host, Travi, professional evidential psychic medium, intuitive investigator, and the voice for stories that refuse to be silenced. This is episode 7 of Unsolved Energy with Travi. Tonight's case is entitled Bump in the Night. Disclaimer: this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The impressions shared are based on intuitive and spiritual interpretation. Now let's get into it. So I took some time to work on the case of Tamala Horsford. For those of you that aren't familiar with the case, this is the African American woman that went to a all-white adult slumber party. What we know about the case is this. In 2018, this mother of 5 attended this all-white slumber party and never made it home. 2, the sheriff's office concluded that this was an accidental fall. And 3, the autopsy cited high levels of alcohol and Xanax in her system. Okay. But what we don't know is what really happened behind the scenes. And that's where I come in. I'm going to tap into the energy surrounding the case, connecting beyond the physical to uncover impressions, emotions, and possible truths that may be still lingering. I started this reading on June 6, 2026 at 1:56 p.m. and I concluded the reading on 6/6 at 2:38 p.m. So I spent almost 45 minutes in the reading, and so I'm going to present my findings to you. Okay. So before I even begin the reading, sorry for all the shuffling, I'm trying to get all the documents together that you guys normally don't hear. Before I began the reading, I heard a few things, okay? So the first thing that I heard was trying to impress a mofo that means good will always be our downfall, the black man's downfall, okay? The second thing I heard was Chardonnay, wine, and then I heard vodka cranberry. The third thing that I noticed or that I saw was that she danced awkwardly. She was always down for a good time. And she looked very similar in the reading to a photograph that she has posted online. And I'll get my phone together for that so I can pull that up for you guys. What else? So I invited the energy into the space to conduct the reading. And for those of you that don't know, normally I have the couch behind me and I invite Spirit to come and have a seat on my couch. But there is a walkway, almost like a catwalk, from the entry point to the couch, where if you've ever seen any of my live readings, I kind of go through and begin to describe Spirit, what they look like, their height, their weight, if they have a limp, if they don't have a limp, if they need a walker, need assistance, things like that. And as I began to, as she began to come in, I noticed that she was wearing a dark tank top, some denim jeans, and she had sunglasses on her head. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's cute or whatever. It was real casual, real cute, nothing major. And I recall when I looked up her case to get a photograph for the reading. For those of you that don't know, when I do these readings, I pull a photograph forward. I have a photo in front of me. And one of the photos that I saw was this one in particular. Dark tank, glasses on top of the head. I thought they were sunglasses during the reading. So that was very interesting for her to come down in that. I also heard before we got started, kids, 3, 2, 5 total, 3 girls, 2 boys, or 3 boys, 2 girls. But in doing my research, I found out something totally different on that. I believe after the reading, when I looked up the case, I found out that she had actually 6 children, even though Google reports her as having 5. So I don't know if 5 were hers and 1 was a bonus kid or how that works, but she actually had 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl. And then the other thing that she told me prior to the reading was, I absolutely love to laugh and have fun. I live for a good turn-up session because moms need a break too. Okay? And so she comes down this runway. She's dancing and emphasizing and doing her thing. And she comes to sit on the couch. And when she sits on the couch, I don't know if this is her posture. If somebody hears this, if you guys can validate this information. She sits on the couch. She extends her left arm out. She takes her left leg and then crosses it over her right leg. She then grabs her cup of wine, which looks to be either Pinot Grigio or Chardonnay. And she's talking and she has the arm up and she's talking like this, and she sips and she does this and yeah, and let's talk, girl. Like, that was the vibe. Like, she was real chill, which was so refreshing. Okay. And so she said, before we get started, I have one more thing. And I said, okay, well, what's the one more thing that you want to talk about? And she asked, did anyone mention possible divorce, rough patch in marriage, 7-year itch? I don't know if anybody mentioned that. I didn't dig that deep after the reading, but it's definitely something that we can get into. Okay. So these are my notes for those of you that don't know. You all, again, don't see this behind the scenes. You just hear me. So I'm going to get started with the reading. So I asked her if she's ready to go, if she's open to converse. And of course she agreed, and we sat down and we had a conversation. Okay. So the first question I asked her was, can you show me or describe to me how you passed? And what she showed me was like probably about an hour prior to her transition. She's, like, we're having fun, we're drinking, we're laughing, we're smoking, we're playing old school games, like elementary school games like leapfrog. I saw like 5 or 6 women, but there was one woman in particular that she didn't necessarily care for or kind of bumped heads with. It could have been a personality thing. And then there was kind of like what felt like a confrontation over the relationship with someone else's significant other. So I don't know if that's her having an issue with a relationship that one of the women had with her husband, or if it's one of the women having issue with a relationship that she had with one of their significant others or their spouses. I asked her if she could describe to me what her cause of death was. And what I heard was broken neck / clavicle, chest / rib cage. And I saw her. She showed me her falling onto her head, her neck, kind of cracking her neck, and then landing hard on her chest, which is when her body like flew forward. Okay. So another thing that she pointed out to me is I asked her, can you show me something that investigators wouldn't know or missed, in a sense? And she kept showing me there's a white gentleman with kind of like reddish brown hair. He reminds me of Prince Harry. I think Prince Harry is Princess Diana's son, with the red hair, like the beard, scruffy a little bit, the curly red hair at the top. And there was a ranking on his army hat. It had like the 3 chevrons, the 3 V's with like an arc on top. I think that's a sergeant. I'm not sure. But I saw the army hat with the 3 V's with the little arc on top. And he like adjusted the hat, pulled it down over his face. So she indicated that was something that may have been missed. I then asked her what happened the day of the passing, and she just said, we cooked together, we did karaoke, we had our brush mics, we were singing in the mics, we were twerking, we were dancing. It was a casual weekend for the girls. And then she indicated that the men left or were separated from the women before the night continued. So I don't know if it was the owner of the house and her husband in particular separated from the rest of the women, but it was definitely men over here and women over here for the night. Okay. So then I asked her who was with her or what exactly happened up on that balcony. And she indicated that after the confrontation, and I have in parentheses, over a man, 2 women took her outside to calm down. Okay. And I asked her, like, were you afraid, or were you aware that something was about to happen? And she said, I wasn't afraid something was about to happen to me, but I will say that instead of Red Bull giving you wings, liquor gives you wings, and it makes you feel invincible. And so she said, after the chat, I stayed out on the balcony, possibly like fell asleep, dozed off. And then I realized like the door was locked, so I had to get back in. Okay. So then I said, okay, well, we're going to get into the hard questions in a sense. And if you can just tell me, do you know the person responsible for your transitioning? And she said, yeah, it was me. And I said, okay, now we're getting somewhere. So I said, was it planned? Was it an accident? Like, what exactly happened? And she said it wasn't planned. It was just stupid. Okay. She indicated, asked her, like, is there any additional evidence like investigators should look for clarity or things like that? And what she said was that the house to the right, if you're standing in the backyard facing the balcony, there was a balcony up top and there was a porch at the bottom. She said if you're standing facing the home and you look to the right of the home, that home had cameras, and she doesn't feel as though they actually did thorough research and search for those cameras. But what I will note is that I did do some research on the case. Like, I actually looked up the case and listened to like it was like a podcast or something on it, and they indicated that the homeowner had cameras in the backyard, but they were not powered on. And the reasoning for them not having power was that I think the homeowner said she was having an issue with someone, and then that situation died down, so she didn't feel it necessary to recharge the cameras in the backyard. So there's absolutely no footage of this woman plummeting to her death. Okay. The next thing I asked her was, can you describe like what happened, or what exactly made you take the route that you took? Okay. And she indicated that the door was locked out of habit. It wasn't malicious. So it feels as though once she calmed down, they had the situation. Okay, girl, you stay out here. You take your cigarette break. You have your drink or your cocktail, whatever, chill out. We're going to go back inside. And someone just out of habit, click, locked the door. And she couldn't get back in. And she was upstairs on the balcony. And I feel like everyone had gone downstairs, so no one could actually hear her. And because she was intoxicated, because she was under the influence, she decided, I literally saw her like, oh, if I just get downstairs, if I can climb down this way or just jump this way, it doesn't look that far. Like, oh, I can just jump over and grab this. And in her mind, she had a whole plan. Okay. That didn't happen. So then I asked her, is there anyone who knows more than what they've said? And she said, they know what happened to me. I was trapped outside, but the person that actually locked the door, which prevented me from coming back into the home, is not going to speak up and tell that portion of the actual story. So that portion of the story is missing. I will say on the podcast that I listened to after the fact, there was some mentioning of the patio door being opened at like 1:30 a.m. and then closed again at like 1:35 a.m., which was either indicative of somebody stepping outside and someone like leaving her out there and coming back in, or her going outside to smoke a cigarette and then coming back in. And then there was another note of the door opening one last time and never closed again. So, and I think that was like a few hours later. Okay, but again, I didn't dig too deep because I wanted to do this reading with integrity, so I didn't want to know anything beforehand, which I didn't. The next thing that I asked her was about if she had a message like for her loved ones. And her message was, I apologize for my stubbornness. And I said, was there anything that's like preventing you from fully crossing over? She said no to that. And so then I asked her, if there was anything, some sort of justice or resolution would help bring peace to her soul. And she said to spread my ashes along the water. Okay. And when I did my research after the fact, I looked up her gravesite. Where is Tamala, where is she buried? And it had indicated that she was cremated. So that was validation for me, like, okay, that's what she means. That makes sense. She wants her ashes spread near water. So she was cremated. Again, when you're doing these readings as an evidential psychic medium, without someone present to actually validate the information that Spirit is giving you, the downloads that you're receiving, everything is just one big question. Everything is just one big kind of guessing game in a sense. And it's like, oh, well, either I'll figure this out, or I won't figure this out, or I'll get the answer if maybe someone from the family comes forward and wants to communicate, or I'll never know the answers. In this particular case, because this was such a large story in the news, when I finished the reading, I was able to go in and listen to the stories told by other people and report on the news to kind of validate throughout. So again, during readings, you are completely psyching yourself out. I still have moments where I stop and I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. And so I had that moment, especially when I heard spread my ashes along the water, because I'm like, well, they had to have, I'm literally second guessing myself. And it wasn't until after I finished the reading and looked up the information that it was validated. So just know, trust and know that as I do these readings for you all and I'm reporting these readings to you guys on this podcast, I have absolutely no idea that this information is accurate or will be proven true until somebody steps forward. Okay? All right, so let's get back into it. Sorry about my little tangent, y'all. Okay, so the other thing is I asked her if she wanted to talk about if there was a way to like honor her memory. And she said to understand the power of stress, addiction, and overindulging. Like many people don't look into that and pay attention to that. And I'm not saying that she had an issue, but overindulging could be a sign for underlying issues. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so lastly, I asked her, like, do you forgive, or do you want forgiveness from anyone, or things like that? And she just said, leave those girls/women alone. I know that everything looks so suspicious, but this is of my own doing. I took it too far. They just didn't want to be blamed. And so they handled the situation the way that they handled the situation to try to avoid being blamed for her transition. Okay. And so then I said, okay, well, we're going to close out soon. And, you know, I've asked you all of my cold case questions. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we conclude this interview? And she indicated, I came, I saw, I conquered. The boys will be fine. And please note that he, meaning her husband, has asked for permission/forgiveness in moving forward with his life romantically. So if anybody does any research and looks into it and finds out that the husband has remarried or is currently seriously dating, he has already asked his wife for permission, I believe has gotten her blessing spiritually. So she's good on that, okay? Don't look at him sideways or give him a side eye because he's moved on. It's been at least 8 years, okay? She then went on to say, all I can say is what a time. I have no hate in my heart, and neither should you. And then she began to blow kisses, blow kisses, blow kisses, blow kisses, as they always do when we're closing out a reading. And she said, thank you for talking to me. It feels good. People don't pull on my energy or pull my energy forward like they used to. This was good for me. It felt like therapy. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet of you. Like, I'm glad I could be of service to you. And then she took her glass of wine. She like took a final sip, and then she set the glass down. And you know how you hear like the glass hit the tabletop? I heard the little wine glass clink on the table. And then she kind of put her hands on her thighs, pushed herself up, and she was like, okay, which way do I go? Which way do I go? Which that way? That go that? I said, yeah, you go that way. And then she said, all right, well, you know, thank you. Talk to you later. She waved and she walked towards the door. And that concluded the interview at 2:38 p.m. So remember, I began at 1:56 p.m. talking to Miss Tammy Horsford, and I concluded the reading at 2:38 p.m. Okay. So after the reading, as I told you guys before, I wanted to validate. I was so intrigued by what she said during the reading that I wanted to validate this information immediately. So I went online, and I remember and listening to that earlier podcast that they indicated that her autopsy report had been made public. And so I went and I found the autopsy report, and me and chat had a good old time breaking some of these things down, okay? And so when looking at the autopsy report, it had two main causes for her transition. The first was listed, the reason A was fracture to the second cervical vertebrae. And if you go back and remember what I said with the cause, when I asked her what was her cause, I heard broken neck and clavicle. So it wasn't clavicle, it was cervical vertebrae, okay? And so I asked Chat, hey Chat, can a person die from a fracture to the second cervical vertebrae? And Chat responded, yes. It can cause respiratory failure, cardiac arrest, and sudden death on the scene of injury. So that made sense. And then the other thing I asked her, or the other information that she provided about her cause of death, I heard like chest/rib cage. And what was listed on the autopsy report was laceration of the right ventricle of the heart. So I put it in chat. Hey Chat, what can cause laceration to the right ventricle of the heart? And Chat indicated common causes are blunt force trauma, collisions, falls from significant heights, and severe crushing injuries to the chest. And what she showed me was her not necessarily leaping as if it was a self-transition moment, but more so kind of losing her balance in her mind while being intoxicated, assuming or feeling like she was Spider-Man and she could climb down and then she ended up falling over, hitting her neck, and then the impact hit her chest, which then caused the tear, which then led to or contributed to her transitioning, which is why she's saying there's no one really at fault but herself. And that's where we're going to leave that for now, okay? So I just want to thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Unsolved Energy with Travi, where the silence still speaks and the energy never dies. If this episode pulled you in, make sure you hit those notifications, subscribe to all podcast platforms, and leave a review so that more people can find the show. And don't forget to subscribe to my TikTok channel and catch me live, where the energy unfolds in real time. Then head over to YouTube and join the replay gang for exclusive replays, clips, and extended content. If you have a code case that you would like for me to look into, a missing person case, or a story that you feel needs a deeper spiritual look, send me your information via email to ConnectWithTravi@gmail.com. Okay? And if you all are interested in booking private sessions, the website address is ConnectWithTravi.com. So remember, protect your energy, trust your intuition, and remember, some cases may go cold, but energy never does. Until next time, talk to you later, guys.